We welcome you to another live edition of the Sports Box, brought to you by our friends at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use the box at sign up for 10 points. And here we go.
Welcome everybody. Hope everybody's excited. It's Friday night. We got some great wild card weekend playoff football ahead of us, which me and Noah are going to jump into in great depth tonight in hopes of getting everybody extra excited for this weekend's games. With that said, though, Noah, and I'm glad to have you here again tonight on Friday night, as always. I hope your week's been great and hope you're really excited for some playoff football. We are going to talk real quickly over the national championship game before we take a deep dive into each one of these wild card games. How are you tonight, Noah?
I'm good, man. How about you?
Great. And we already got our guys David and Josh in here. I'll throw their comments up real quickly. Glad to have you guys in here. As always, you guys make the show. With that said, obviously, Monday night, we have our college football championship. Ohio State is going to be taking on Alabama, as we all know. And really the big news this week and moving into that game, Noah, is this guy right here, Jalen Waddle. I think that he's really the biggest question mark for this game and could potentially be the biggest impact player with drawing a lot of attention off of the Heisman winner Devontae Smith, should he play. There really isn't anything for certain yet other than he has been medically cleared and he has been participating in practice. I haven't seen to what extent, but personally, I'm really excited for this game. Noah, I don't really have a horse in this race, but I'm just going to be excited to sit down and watch that game Monday night.
Yeah, man, it's definitely going to be an interesting game. I'm kind of with you. I don't really have a horse, mainly because I don't really like either team, but, I think it will be a good game. You can't count out Ohio State after what they did to Clemson. Just went in there, completely dismantled that defense, especially after we had been praising Clemson for a few weeks that they actually had a pretty good defense. And, Justin Fields just went in there. I believe he threw 6 touchdown passes in that game. Trey Sermon is an actual beast at the running back position. And, I think their defense is starting to improve a little bit as well because, I think that game was something like 49-21 before Clemson scored a late touchdown. So you certainly can't overlook Ohio State in this game. Like you mentioned, Jalen Waddle is a big thing. This is a guy who is a deep threat target. He's averaging 22.3 yards per reception this year. 557 yards, only 25 receptions, 4 touchdowns. So, obviously Devontae Smith is going to be the main guy. I mean, congratulations on the Heisman win, by the way, to him. But, that second target, like you mentioned, to take some pressure off him, I think is going to be a really key matchup there. And obviously, Mac Jones is going to do his thing. I think Najee Harris against the Ohio State run defense could very well decide the game because if they establish the run and then, Mac is able to throw it deep on play action and stuff like that, I think the defense is going to have a really hard time defending that.
Yeah, and I think, Noah, that the biggest thing that jumps out at me is, at least on paper, season stats, for yards per game, points per game, yards allowed per game. These teams are actually very evenly matched. Alabama is favored. I forget by exactly how much, but it isn't some huge gap. And a lot of people probably are going into this thinking that Bama's Bama. They're probably gonna in there and pound them, and rightfully so. I mean, you got to go with Bama until you're proven wrong. And Nick Saban, you can never really bet against that man with how great he has been. But to me, this is a game where if Ohio State shows up to play, they don't really have a hangover from that Clemson game. They're not dwelling on that. They're not still excited. And they took the time to prepare for this game. We very well could see a game that, I think is going to be an offensive shootout. Neither one of these defenses are elite. They have improved, yes. They've looked much better in recent weeks. But I think that really this is going to be a game of offensive firepower. Justin Fields had the game of probably his career against Clemson. Absolutely phenomenal. Just went off. I look for him to have another good performance, especially with him going off to the NFL draft more than likely. So, I like to see a big game from him, big game from Sermon. And obviously, with Jalen Waddle potentially coming back, he was really the guy at Alabama this season until he did go down. And that allowed Devontae Smith to really emerge. So, just having him there, even, if he has a couple catches for, 20 or 30 yards, it just draws attention away from Devontae Smith. You can't double Devontae Smith every single play if Waddle is out there. So, there's a lot I really look forward to in that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you make a great point there about Waddle. This is a guy that he only played 4 games this year, and he was averaging well over 125 yards a game. You look at his box score, 134, 142, 120, 161. This is a guy that he gets lots of targets, and when he gets those targets, he's a deep threat. He's able to break free, good at scoring touchdowns, 4 touchdowns in 4 games. I mean, this is a guy that's a stud, and I think with his injury and Devontae Smith obviously doing so well and winning the Heisman, I think some people might have kind of, I wouldn't say forgot about him, but they're probably overlooking him a little bit. So if he's ready to play and he comes, full strength, it's going to be very difficult for Ohio State to defend. I think this is going to be a very interesting game because, obviously, like you mentioned, Alabama, they're the standard for college football, one of the greatest dynasties we've ever seen. And then on the other side, you look at Ryan Day, this is his first national championship game. He's got a lot to prove, especially taking over from a coach like Urban Meyer. I think, he's going to have a lot of pressure on him. I don't think he's ever had any amount of pressure like this. I know the Clemson game was big, but the national championship is just a completely different level. So I'm excited to see what Justin Fields does in this game. I'm excited to see what Mac does as well because I think he's a very good player. And, I agree with that. I think this is going to be a shootout because, like you mentioned, I don't think either team has that elite defense you might expect from them in most seasons.
Yeah, and I think, the toughest thing that Ohio State is going to face with Alabama is the fact that on that defense, it isn't just one guy that you really got to watch out for. If you get caught playing zone coverage and playing backs, in coverage, Najee Harris can absolutely scorch you in between the tackles and even taking it outside and receiving out of the backfield. And then you have the issue if you do stack the box and try to stop the run, you have Waddle and Devontae Smith out wide that can torch you over the top. Both are absolute speedsters and create separation and deep threats. So, it's going to be a really, really big test for the Ohio State Buckeye defense. I do think that they have a really strong defensive front with that defensive line. A lot of veteran guys there that play physical and can really get after the quarterback and get into the backfield. So I think that's going to help them a little bit with that run game. But I think you just, you can't get caught sleeping on defense. Really focus on one aspect of that offense. You just got to play a very good game from start to finish. On the other side, what I saw of Ohio State against Clemson is, yes, Trey Sermon absolutely went off, but guys like Olave and even some of the tight ends really came up huge for that offense. I think they're going to need that again. You can't just rely on one guy there. I look for Justin Fields to, he's got to have a big game. I feel like he's got to have some rushing yards. He's got to get out of the pocket. He's got to be a huge threat for Bama so that they can't just sit back in coverage, and he doesn't really have anybody to throw to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Justin Fields is the key here. Obviously he can sling the rock all over the place. He showed that, throwing the 6 touchdowns last week, completing 79% of his passes. I mean, just incredible production from him. But like you mentioned, I think the key thing with him is his mobility. This isn't a guy that's just going to stand back there and, throw it 50 times a game. He can do that, but he can also, take off, get some extra yardage, and you can't understate how frustrating that is for a defense to contain. You cover the pass perfectly, and then he can run off and get a first down or a big gain like that. That's a really key element to his game right there. And like you mentioned, Ohio State, sure Trey Sermon's a beast, but receiving wise, I think that Justin Fields has shown he can really spread the ball well, and they need to do that against Alabama, because if you're one dimensional, if you only have one game plan, it's not going to work. So I agree. I think this game is going to be decided at the line of scrimmage. Ohio State's D line going up against that monster offensive line that Alabama pretty much always has. It's going to be a great game.
Yeah, and should Alabama win, that would put Nick Saban at 6 national championships. I think a lot of people already feel he is, but should he win this, in my eyes, there's absolutely no doubt that he's got to be at the top of, the conversation for best college football coaches ever. That's just, it's insane, especially, it feels like Nick Saban's been at Alabama forever, but in all honesty, he really hasn't. And there's so many years still to come. And with the recruiting that they keep pumping out year after year, this guy could potentially end up with like 10 national championships. It's absolutely ridiculous. The only other guy in any college sport I can think of is your guy John Wooden with 10 in basketball.
Yeah, I was actually about to mention that myself, but yeah, I mean, the production is just insane. Obviously, you don't have to like Alabama. I certainly don't. I hate their guts, but you got to respect them. Like I said, they are the standard everyone's trying to reach. They're the standard that both our teams are trying to reach to be the top of the SEC, compete for championships. So, Nick Saban, I agree, he's definitely at the top of conversation. I have him right there with Bear Bryant for the greatest of all time. Obviously, you got to mention guys like Osborne. I think Urban Meyer's up there as well. But I'd say he's minimum the second best coach of all time. If he wins this, there's definitely a big debate to be had right there. Like my guy John Wooden and your guy Coach K. So yeah, I mean, big stuff on the line. Obviously, a national championship game. Nick Saban looking, to further cement his legacy, and Ryan Day is looking to kind of start his on a high note. So this is going to be a great game.
Yeah, definitely it would be very huge for Ryan Day, all the success he's already had. But if he could, finally get a national championship as a head coach, he's been there before, obviously with Urban Meyer, but, that'd be absolutely huge for him to go in there and win it his first time. With that said, and I want to go ahead and welcome Darren to the stream, regular viewer. Glad to have you here, man. Saw you notice Philly real quickly there. We are going to talk some NFL now. We're going to shift gears, but we're going to focus more so on all these great playoff matchups that we have. So we might not get to Philly. I do apologize, but we are definitely going to talk some NFL now. With that said, we're going to go in order of the games being played. Kicking off tomorrow, we have the Colts at the Bills at 1 o'clock. Game is in Buffalo. I don't know the weather, but I imagine it's probably not going to be too warm. And there will be fans in attendance. Yes, limited, of course. But yeah, obviously I wore this jersey tonight, Phillip Rivers. He's in yet another playoff game. I don't want to dwell on it too much because I feel like the more you talk about it, the more, I'm a little bit superstitious about you jinx it. But he is 4-0 in the wild card round. Hopefully he can end up being 5-0 tomorrow, despite me also rooting for the Bills. I just realized Phillip Rivers doesn't have too many years left, and I'd rather see him, advance. The Bills are going to be good for years to come. But you have a very evenly matched matchup here on paper, at least. Noah. Both teams, very well balanced. Bills defense has come on late in the season and really improved when they looked slow and sluggish at the start of the season. Colts are ranked 10th in total offense and 8th in total defense. Very balanced team, as we've said, week after week on here. And Bills, behind Josh Allen and that arm and his ability to scramble and create plays, second in total offense in the league. And they're all the way up there to 14th in total defense. What are some of the things that you're looking out of this game, Noah? And what do you think can be some big impact players or keys for either one of these teams?
Well, this is just a fantastic matchup. Obviously, I don't think there's any bad teams in the playoffs. I mean, sure, you could say Washington finished 7-9, but they finished the season strong. These two teams are certainly high quality. When I'm looking at this game, you got to look at the playmakers. obviously, when you first look at it, you got to look at Josh Allen and that Bills offense. This is an offense that's absolutely loaded. Josh Allen, second team All Pro. Stephon Diggs, I just saw, a couple hours ago. I'm sure everyone has. He was a first team All Pro. Libby had 127 catches this season. Cole Beasley has been the best slot receiver in the NFL this year. And lately their running game has started to pick it up a little bit too, in my opinion. So, that offense is going to put points up at will, like it says right there, ranked second in total offense. And then on the other side, when I look at it, I think the main key for this game, Garth, the Bills' running defense is not as good as you think it is. They're good against the pass, like the Colts are, but their running defense is actually middle of the road. I believe they've given up, I have the stats up here, they've given up 21 rushing touchdowns this season, given up 4.6 yards per carry, almost given up 2,000 yards rushing on the season. So, it's average, but it's not like they have an elite rushing defense. So when I look at it, I look at that, obviously, that mammoth offensive line on Indy. I'm looking at a guy like Jonathan Taylor right here. I think that if they can establish the run and, the offense stays balanced, Philip Rivers is enough. He's played long enough to know, to spread the ball around. He doesn't have that, other than T.Y. Hilton, I'd say he doesn't have that elite receiver. So he's going to, be looking for everybody in that offense. And if not, Naheem Hines, receiving out of the backfield as well. So, this is going to be a great game, man. I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be very close. And, it's just unfortunate. The two teams I'm rooting for most in the playoffs have to play in the wild card round. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy, to be a 1 o'clock game with just how good of a matchup, this should be. But there's just so many good games this weekend. I don't think there's really any team that is undeserving that made it in. I mean, there is arguments for NFC East and, but still that Washington, defense is very, very good. We'll get more into that when we get to that game. But having a new viewer to our stream, I'd like to welcome you, man. Glad to have you here tonight. Putting some comments here. I want to talk about this one right here. What would be both teams' weaknesses? And I'm glad that you asked this because Noah already mentioned one. I have to agree with him. The Bills' run defense is not very good at all. And they're going up against a team that runs the ball very, very effectively. As he mentioned, great offensive line. Jonathan Taylor can really run the ball between the tackles, and even Hines, they get him in the jet sweep action and screens out of the backfield. He's more of a receiving back, but they get him the ball in the backfield and he just creates plays. So for me and the Bills, that's their biggest weakness headed into this game is how well are they going to be able to defend the run. And, if they can't defend the run well, that's going to make Philip Rivers' job so much easier because he's going to not have the box he's not going to have the defenders, being able to play lax. They're going to have to play tight man-on-man coverage. And I don't really know, obviously they have one lockdown corner, but, if you're having to play tight man-to-man coverage, there's going to be a lot of separation there for the Colts. But, in the play action, you get that going. As far as the Colts go, my biggest weakness for them, and I can say that I've honestly watched a lot of them this year with Philip Rivers, is the fact that they start games really hot, Noah. I've seen a lot of games where they've jumped up early on teams, gotten a pretty sizable lead. We saw it most recently with Pittsburgh and even last week with the Jaguars. Honestly, they get out to these really big early leads. They look like they're going to absolutely blow somebody out. And then they just kind of hit this wall. I don't know. Maybe it's some of the youth on the team, the inexperience. Maybe, they just kind of, the mentality, hey, we got these guys put away, and teams come back on them and make it much closer than the game should be. Like I said, with the Steelers, they looked like they had them on the ropes, looked like it was going to be a handed victory and, win that division and potentially be a number 2 or 3 seed. And, all of a sudden they fell apart and the Steelers, blew them out in the second half. So for me, how are the Colts going to start and how are the Colts going to finish? Because Colts don't want to get behind. I will say my biggest criticism of my guy Philip Rivers is it seems like when he does play his worst football is when he's behind big and, has to try to come up with these big, huge plays. And that seems to be when he does not take care of the ball so well. And 2, should they actually start off hot and get ahead of the Bills? Are they going to be able to keep that lead or are they going to slump and let the Bills take the game right back over?
Yeah, and I think you make a lot of great points there. And I think that was a great question by our guy Henry. New viewer, welcome to the show. But yeah, like I said, I think the Bills' biggest weakness is their rush defense, and I agree, Josh. And I think when I look at the Colts, I think their biggest defense or their biggest weakness You make a great point there. They do fall behind, or excuse me, they get ahead in these games and then they kind of let it slip away. That Steelers game was, obviously pretty embarrassing to watch. And I think, like you said, when Philip Rivers falls behind, he doesn't play well. And I think the Colts' biggest weakness, in my opinion, is their skills positions because T.Y. Hilton he started off really slow. He had a good end of the season. But other than that, when you look at it, their team leader in receptions was actually Naheem Hines at running back. I think Zach Pascal's had an okay season, but Paris Campbell's had been out for the season, most of the season with an ACL and MCL injury, I believe it was. Michael Pittman's still a rookie; he's still learning. Other than that, when you look at the tight end position, they got guys like Mo Alley Cox, Trey Burton, and Jack Doyle who just kind of share that load. So I'm not saying that the skills positions are garbage or anything, but I don't see that one, standout guy like a Stephon Diggs, like a DeAndre Hopkins, guys like that. So in my opinion, if Philip Rivers falls behind, like you mentioned, he doesn't play well in the situations. If they abandon the running game with Jonathan Taylor, I don't think they have the skills positions to, air it out 40 times a game or 40 times in the second half to try to get back into a game. So they have to stay in it from the very start.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, Noah, because that actually is one thing that I forgot to mention. I feel like the Colts play their best football when they do stick with the run game, throughout the whole game. I feel like with that Pittsburgh Steelers game, in the second half, they kind of came out just trying to air the ball out and really got away from the run game. I feel like it didn't help them. Much like David said, control the clock, run the ball. You don't want to make this a shootout. And one thing that I want to mention about this game is we all know, I know you and David both know, one thing that I very commonly say is that I feel like for some teams, traveling to cold weather environment, especially outdoors in the playoffs, can kind of be, kind of like a kryptonite. It really takes the top off of highly loaded offenses, in my opinion. But, this Colts team to me is built for this kind of game, much like the Bills. They're very physical on both lines of scrimmage. DeForest Buckner, absolute monster season by him, franchise record for sacks. And you got some really impressive guys that played, in that Colts uniform at defensive end, and Roger Mathis and Dwight Freeney. And very obviously very good offensive line. They can run the ball well. They play a really fast, physical type of defense. So fortunately for them, I do think that this isn't a game that's going to cause them to, be off a beat or not in sync with because of the weather. So just a very, very good game as far as I'm concerned. Kind of sucks to me that it's the first game of the weekend at 1:00, but regardless, I'm going to tune in and watch this and, really, really, really hope my guy, Philip Rivers, that this could be potentially his last season. I just hope he can get it done. Nothing against the Bills. I just obviously got to root for my favorite player of all time.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Obviously, the Bills are probably my favorite team left in the playoffs, but like you mentioned there, I think that this might very well be Philip Rivers' last chance to win a Super Bowl to really cement his legacy. And when I look at a team like the Bills, I think this is a core that can stay together for a very long time. I think Josh Allen's going to be there for, easily 10 to 15 more years at a very high level. He works very hard. He's improved every season. I don't see him going away. So, if I had to choose a team that I'm leaning for, rooting for, it's got to be the Colts. It's really close, but it's going to be a good game. Obviously, two just very good teams. We can't forget, the Colts were a team that were easily battling for the division towards the end of the season, and if the Texans do what they do best and just suck, they could have won it. So this is going to be a very good game. I'm probably going to pick the Bills just because I think their offense is so absolutely stacked, and I think that their passing defense is actually pretty good. And like I said, I'm not too confident in the Colts' skills positions. Um, that said, I think this is probably a one possession game. I would not be surprised at all if the Colts pulled it off. Um, but yeah, I'm going to go with the Bills here.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm going to go with the Colts, and it's not because I truly feel like they're going to win. It's just, out of bias. I'll be honest with everybody here. Josh, Colts are a feel-good story, but the Bills have been held down for too long coming into hot. Yeah, most definitely. As we all know, it's been a very long time since, the Bills won their division, let alone came in the playoffs as a number 2 seed. So definitely, like Noah said, probably one possession game. With that said, we still have plenty of games to go over. So let's go ahead and move on to our next game of tomorrow. And, this is a game that, I'm really interested to see how this one plays out. The Rams, they've had some really good games this season. I also feel like they've had some very bad games. I think that their defense has been there all season. Absolutely phenomenal defense. Aaron Donald, unanimous All Pro again this season. Um, as we can all see there, their first in total defense on the year. Surprisingly, 11th in total offense. If I didn't know that number, I feel like they'd probably be a little bit lower, just because I feel like Jared Goff is very hit or miss week in, week out. But for me, the biggest question mark in this game is going to be, how does Seattle's defense perform? As we all know, that's really been their biggest weak link on the season. As we all see, they're only ranked 22nd in total defense. This is our 4:40 time slot game. Seattle favored by only 3 at home. Another game that I'm very excited for, Noah.
Yeah, man. Obviously division rivalry, it has a little bit of an extra edge to it. Obviously, all these playoff games are going to be nice and chippy, but these two teams, they have a history. They hate each other. It might not be as popular because it's an NFC West rivalry, but you could tell these two teams just don't like each other, and you know it's just going to be such a good game. Looking at the stats there, like you said, I think Seattle's defense is something you have to keep an eye on, and also I'm keeping an eye on this injury report, man. I got all the injury reports up for these games. The main concern for me is what's going on with Jared Goff. Is he going to be playing this game? I think unless he's, basically dead, he's got to be playing this game, because if John Wolford starts this game, even against that Seahawks defense, which is really suspect, I'm not going to fancy their chances. But if Jared Goff does play, and I think he probably will play, in my opinion, I believe that while the Seahawks offense is absolutely loaded and it's high flying, I actually think the Rams are the more complete team. And when you see the stats right there, Rams first in total defense, Seahawks are 22nd. The Rams are 11th in total offense, Seahawks are 17th. So, I think that the Seahawks are a team, they like to air it out. They're just high flying with guys like DJ Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Um, I don't really have the stats up here, readily available, but I'm not too sure how good their running game is. So, I'll have to do some research on that. I think here we go. They're averaging 3.9 yards per carry. So, nothing too great there. The big thing to me is Jared Goff going to play?
Yeah, and I got to agree with you there, Noah. Obviously, Jared Goff, unless you're very, very seriously injured, you got to play. I feel like if he doesn't play, Rams are basically asking for a miracle. We all know, despite there not being a packed crowd, Seattle is still one of the hardest places to play in the playoffs. Definitely not a place that any team really wants to travel to. Like I said, my biggest question mark for this game is, what are we going to see out of Seattle's defense? Are we going to get a team that plays to their ranking of 22nd in the league, or are they going to, have a better performance because they are a little bit hyped up? It is the playoffs. They're at home, and it is a division rivalry, like you pointed out. It's going to be a very chippy game. I expect a lot of big hits, a lot of, big plays spread out with a lot of, game management, clock management. I feel like if I have to pick a team here, Noah, I'm going Seattle only because I give them the slightest edge of being at home. But with that said, I would not be surprised if the Rams pulled it off. And then another thing with this game is, when does Seattle start to demand a little bit more out of Pete Carroll should they lose this game? Because they do have an MVP caliber quarterback in Russell Wilson. And I feel like, ever since they've slumped a little bit from those Super Bowl appearances, the team around Russell hasn't been as good as it, was back then. Not even close. I mean, you had guys like Marshawn Lynch absolutely dominating, Legion of Boom defense, obviously. So I feel like this is a very big year for the Seattle Seahawks in postseason, as far as their head coach and the front office goes. Because, should you just get eliminated in the wild card round, that's kind of, it's going to be a huge letdown. Obviously, I don't think they're a team that's going to make it to the Super Bowl and win, but at the same time, like I said, Russell Wilson at quarterback performing at an MVP level pretty much year in, year out. You're expecting a lot from this organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as long as Russell Wilson's there, they're going to contend. But like you said there, and I agree, I don't really see either of these teams as Super Bowl contenders. I think they just have, a few too many flaws. Like I said, Seattle's defense, and can Jared Goff stay healthy? So yeah, David, I'm looking at the injury report. I don't really see anything about Jared Goff. I looked it up earlier. I think he said it was coming along nicely. So I'm really keeping an eye on that because if Jared Goff doesn't play, I don't think they have any chance. And if he does play, and he's kind of banged up, the thumb is a very important part for throwing your football, obviously. So you know that is very concerning. Now, you know, I know you picked Seattle. I think that's a very fair pick. In my opinion, I believe, and obviously I don't know for sure. I can't, tell the future, but in my opinion, if Jared Goff plays and he plays like I think he can, I'll probably pick the Rams in this game because I think their team is more well balanced. That said, if Jared Goff comes in and he's not looking good or he doesn't even play at all, then you got to pick Seattle. But I'm just going to operate on the idea that he will play and he'll do pretty well, and I'm going to pick the Rams in this game.
Yeah, I feel like, if Jared Goff isn't 100%, no, the offensive scheme will probably be pretty conservative for the Rams. They'll probably try to run the ball a little bit more and chew up some clock, which they're definitely capable of doing. Um, but it's definitely not a game plan that, you want to be behind it and having to run the ball and trying to catch up. So, for me personally, the biggest question mark of that game tomorrow is will Jared Goff play or not? And if so, is he 100% or how close to 100% is he? Because they definitely need a good performance from their quarterback to, try to win that game. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into our next game of tomorrow, our third and final game on Saturday's slate. And this is a game that personally I'm probably just as excited for as that Colts game. And that's going to be Tampa Bay at Washington. Yes, you're reading that right, guys, at Washington, despite Tampa Bay having the better record. Obviously, Washington did end up winning that division and getting to host a playoff game in the wild card round. This is our Saturday night game, 8:15 kickoff, ESPN, NBC. And despite Washington being at home, Tampa Bay is an 8-point favorite. I feel like that's probably pretty accurate because, yes, that Washington defense is very, very, very good. The offense is not as much as I like Alex Smith. It is what it is. Reading off the numbers here, Tampa Bay 7th in total offense, 6th in total defense. Despite some very questionable games this season, they are very, very balanced. And they have had great performances on both sides of the ball throughout the season. Washington, all the way down there at 30th in total offense. As I said, definitely not, anything crazy at the offensive side. And second in total defense. Very, very good defense. Chase Young commenting this week, he's really excited to get out there and get after Tom Brady.
Yeah, I did see that quote. Obviously, I like the confidence. He very well could be right. That said, I've seen a lot of guys say stuff like that before, and then Tom Brady goes out there and he passes for like 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, no picks. So, I'd just be a little bit careful. Tom Brady, say what you want about him. I know a lot of people don't like him, but he's 43 years old and he's thrown 40 touchdowns and 12 interceptions this year. I mean, this guy's just incredible. That offense is really good, high flying. You look at Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. AB will get a pass every now and then. Gronk, he's a good blocker, and every now and then he'll get something. So, this is a very interesting matchup. David picking the Bucs to win by 17. I don't think it'll be that far off because, like you said, I think that Washington's defense is actually really good, and I actually think it's underrated. It's gone under the radar because, in my opinion, Washington's team, it hasn't been very good all year. But you got to look at it. Don't underestimate a hot team coming in the playoffs. This is a team that I believe since Alex Smith has taken over has been 4-1 or 5-1, something like that. They struggled really badly with Dwayne Haskins. And sure, Alex Smith isn't lighting it up or anything. I think he only has 6 touchdown passes to 8 interceptions, something like that. But the team is winning with him, and I think Antonio Gibson is a good running back. Alex Smith, he brings this veteran edge that a guy like Dwayne Haskins won't. And, he's a good game manager, so I'm not going to expect him to make any major mistakes. I think this game will be decided at the line of scrimmage because, like you said, guys like Chase Young coming off the edge to get Tom Brady. Tom Brady is not a mobile quarterback, obviously, so if they can get consistent pressure, I think that can really destroy Tampa Bay's game plan. But, my thing is, what's this Washington defense going to do against these receivers? Because, I do think they have a really good D-line, but Tampa Bay just has so many weapons, they can throw the ball to, like I mentioned before. So, I don't think it's going to be, Bucks win by 17 like David said there. I think it's going to be a really close game in my opinion because, while the Bucks have come in, maybe on a little bit of a skid, the Redskins are really hot. And I don't know if Mike's in here. I haven't seen, you throw up any comments from him, but I saw him say something a few days ago I thought was a really good point. All the pressure in this game is on Tampa Bay. Tom Brady, he has all the pressure on him to show he can win some playoff games without Bill Belichick. Bruce Arians, he's looking to finally win the Super Bowl. This team is well, they're not unproven. They're good, but they're unproven in the playoffs. They have a lot to prove in this game. And I think Washington, they have no pressure. No one's picking them in this game, I don't think. They're 7-9. They barely sneaked into the playoffs because the Eagles basically threw that game against them. So, all the pressure is on Tampa Bay. So what are they going to do to live up to that pressure? Now, if you want to live up to pressure, there's no better guy to do it than Tom Brady, obviously. So I think it's going to be a really close game.
Yeah, and I know a few Packers fans personally who truly feel like Tom Brady and the Bucks are the biggest threat to the Packers and their journey to the Super Bowl. One guy that you mentioned there, Noah, and I don't have the injury report up in front of me, and I haven't really been following it at all this week, to be honest. But Mike Evans did exit the game last week. I don't know if that's an injury that's going to keep him out of this week or slow him down at all. But if so, one guy who I look for to be a huge help to that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, who has been getting more involved each week as the season progresses, is Antonio Brown. Like you said, absolutely loaded a skill position on the offense, and I feel like just the more guys that can be involved and be a factor, the better this Bucs offense is going to be. I look for Antonio Brown and Gronk, two guys that 1 week are really involved and then the next they're not, to have big games here. Bucs are going to have to get the ball out quickly. That defensive front of Washington is elite. As we all know, they can really get after the quarterback with the best of them. And Tom Brady also, throughout his career has been a quarterback with a very quick release time. He doesn't really stand around in the pocket very long. He gets the ball out quick, finds the open receiver. So, it's really going to be a battle of strengths there. I do feel that the Bucs offensive line is good, but not great. So that's something that as a Washington Redskins, you got to take advantage of that offensive front and try to put pressure on Tom Brady, because that is probably your biggest way of winning this game, is to get him on the ground, potentially force some turnovers. Because the last thing you want is a shootout for the Buccaneers just to be pushing you up and down the field. That offense is not capable of an offensive shootout type game. So if you're the Redskins going into this game, defense, get after Tom Brady, put him on the ground, force some turnovers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're completely right. I think the main matchup for this game is, what's a guy like Donovan Smith going to do against Chase Young, who's an absolute stud. If they can get back there and wreak havoc in the backfield on Tom Brady, they're going to have a really good chance. If they can't get back there and Tom Brady has all day to throw to those, those absolutely incredible weapons, it is game over. Because, like you said, Washington does not have the offense to keep up with Tampa Bay if they have to get into a shootout. So, I'm glad you mentioned Mike Evans because I got the injury report up here. Mike Evans is questionable to play. He was a limited participant on Thursday. So we'll see how that goes. Some key names here. LaShawn McCoy is also questionable. He did not participate on Thursday. Carlton Davis, who's one of their best corners, questionable, but he did fully participate. Jonathan Ledbetter out, one of the defensive linemen, did not participate. Ronald Jones, full participant, so he's probably going to play. Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh, JPP, limited participant, and then Ndamukong Suh, DNP. So, a lot of key injuries there for Tampa Bay, especially on that defensive line and the defense. And, two running backs out, obviously Mike Evans. So it's going to be key to see, what's going on with their injuries there. And then, looking at Washington, Thomas Davis is out because he did not participate all week. Antonio Gibson is questionable, limited participant. Terry McLaurin, Alex Smith, all limited participants, but I think they'll all play. And then, Jonathan Allen, Kendall Fuller, Brandon Scherf are all in there as well, but they were all full participants, so I think they'll all play.
Yeah, definitely some big-time names that you mentioned there on the Buccaneers side, especially the defensive side, Noah. Definitely wanting to have those guys play, obviously. And should they not, the Bucs defense, next man up mentality, you got to get it done. I don't feel like by any means do they have to have a perfect, very well-executed game on the defensive side of the ball. They need to do just enough with that Washington offense not being the greatest. But with that said, should they have those guys all out and not really play their best game, maybe Washington can put up some points and really stay in this thing. Um, David saying Skins by 17 here. I don't know if he truly means that or he's just rooting really hard against the Buccaneers. But how cool would that be to see potentially a third matchup in the playoffs with Breeze and Brady? But yeah, before we jump over to our Sunday slate, Noah, another 3 games to go over, another 3 fantastic games. I'm going to go ahead and mention crowd play really quickly, as you guys all see every week. They're here in the stream with us. They're sharing us on Twitter. Very, very big partner of the Sports Box in all of our streams. Make sure that you guys are checking them out on the Google Play Store, Apple Play Store and the Google Store. Use code THEBOX for 10% off. Really cool way to get extra involved in the games and potentially win prizes and money. I'm going to go ahead and throw this up real quickly, and we will be right back with you guys. All right, we are back, guys, and as I said, we are going to jump over to our Sunday slate. Another 3 games to go over there. First game kicking off on Sunday, another absolutely phenomenal game to be at 1 o'clock. Noah, we do have Baltimore Ravens taking on the Tennessee Titans at 1 o'clock, ESPN and ABC. Baltimore, despite being the road team, favored by 3 points, 19th in total offense, 7th in total defense. I think that defense probably is a little bit better than they get credit for. And then we have Tennessee 3rd in total offense. As we all know, they can put up points very quickly. Derrick Henry, absolute monster. I don't think I need to give much explanation on him, obviously. But only 28th in total defense. And I know a few Titans fans in our group over there at Sports Life, that's their biggest critique of this team is, man, our defense is not good and has cost us or almost cost us a lot of games. So definitely, that's one thing to look out for in that game. And the other thing for me is, despite how good that Ravens defense is, Derrick Henry, man, you're not going to stop him, but you have to slow him down. You can't let him have a 200 rushing yards with 3 or 4 touchdowns. You're not going to win the game, in my opinion, if that's what you allow. But that, to me, Derrick Henry got to slow him down.
Absolutely. We just saw that he was named the first team All-Pro at running back today. So an absolute tank. The best runner in the NFL. When he breaks past the offensive line against the open field, it's just unfair. I think that is a pretty fair prediction by David there. But I think the main thing when I look at this game is these are 2 teams that just love to run the ball. When you look at the stats, the Ravens are number 1 in rushing offense, Titans are number 2. And obviously a lot of that for the Ravens comes from Lamar Jackson, his dual threat ability. But they still got Mark Ingram, they got J.K. Dobbins. They can remain balanced running the ball. And obviously the Titans, most of it comes from Derrick Henry, a 2,000-yard rusher. I believe only one of 8 men to ever do that. And, these are 2 teams that just love running the ball. They're well-balanced. But, my main thing looking at the game, Garth, is what's Lamar going to do when he has to pass the ball? We saw last season they also played the Titans. And, I think he had over 500 yards of offense in that game. But I think a lot of it was, when the game was kind of getting away from him and he was trying to, furiously pass and get them back in that game. So, he's kind of struggled a little bit in his playoff games so far. Can he have that, trademark performance that we're looking for? And the other side, Ryan Tannehill, we've talked about him a lot. If they get behind, can he pass his way out of it as well? Because neither of these teams are 2 teams that, want to really pass the ball out. They're focused on running the ball and then passing off of it. And, Josh, I completely agree there. But, neither of these are, teams that want to throw it 40 times a game. they want to run it 40 times a game if they can. So, which rushing defense is going to do better? And I think that's the key here. Just looking at stats, I don't really have the exact numbers out right now, but I don't think either team is really good at stopping the run. I know obviously the Titans do not have a good defense. And then when we look at the stats, the Ravens actually have the seventh best rush defense. So, excuse me right there. But, if the Titans can't stop, let's say, the running backs or Lamar Jackson, I think they're going to have a very tough time in this game.
Yeah, and I think that you make a very good point there. What are we going to see out of both of these quarterbacks? Obviously Ryan Tannehill's been very solid on the season, but like you said, should the Titans get behind, should their defense kind of put them in a hole early on, and they try to air the ball out to get caught back up in the game, how's Ryan Tannehill going to perform? Because, much like Phillip Rivers, I feel like he isn't as good of a quarterback when he is playing from behind it and having to, try to air it out every play. And then equally on the other side with the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, are we going to see a really good performance by him? Or are we going to see a performance where, he kind of struggles to throw the ball and turns it over here and there? So, yeah, definitely for me, some of the keys is obviously quarterback play from both of these teams. Like I said, not stopping Derrick Henry, obviously, because it's not possible as far as I'm concerned, but slowing him down enough to where he isn't single-handedly just, running you out of the stadium. With that said, I feel like this is a very evenly matched up game where you have two teams, like you said, they want to run the ball, they want to control the clock. They're not looking to throw for ungodly passing yards. And I think that probably the biggest deciding factor is going to be how good do the Titans play defense, because I feel like at some point, if we get the Titans defense that we've seen all year, even if they get up big, they're going to let the Ravens into the game, whether or not the Ravens actually end up winning. It's going to be a ball game as far as I'm concerned, right down to the last play. If I had to pick a team here, that's very tough. I'm not going to lie. It's very hard for me to predict this game because I can definitely see it going either way. I think that ultimately it comes down to how big of a game Derrick Henry has. If he only has like 100 rushing yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns, I feel like Baltimore wins. If he has 2 or 3, if not more, rushing touchdowns and runs for like 150 plus yards, I feel like the Titans win. I'm just going to go out on a limb here. Like I said, I don't feel really strongly one way or another. I'm going to go Titans by 3.
And, I think that's the same thing David said, and I think it's a perfectly fair prediction. And, I know obviously our guy Josh Lane is in here. I saw him post a poll earlier today, suggesting who do we think is going to win this game. And I saw, like 20 people pick the Titans and only 1 picked the Ravens. I think that's a bit ridiculous, if I'm being honest. I think this is a really close game. And, like David says right there, I think A.J. Brown and Corey Davis are 2 very good receivers. A.J. Brown had a fantastic season. And, for a team that doesn't, pass the ball a lot, I believe they only had around 3,500 yards passing this season. Yeah, 3,653. They still get a lot of production. The Tennessee Titans threw 3 touchdown passes. I don't know if that's all Ryan Tannehill or maybe some backup threw 1 or 2, but Tannehill, he's throwing a lot of touchdown passes. The receivers are really good, and they don't throw it very often, like I said, but when they do, they can be very effective with it. And like Josh says there, the Ravens are coming in hot, and he does want revenge because last season, it was not good when they played, and I know Earl Thomas got made into a meme by Derrick Henry in that game because, he just got absolutely stiff-armed to oblivion. But this is a really tough game to predict because, in my opinion, like I said, I think there are 2 teams that are very similar. I think they're both a little bit unproven, especially at the quarterback position. You have 2 quarterbacks who, don't get me wrong, I believe are very good players, but, have they had those big playoff performances that you want to see from them? Probably not. They both pride themselves on really running the ball. And like you said, I think the main difference could be the difference in quality and defenses because, the Ravens are good at stopping the run. The Titans really aren't. So if Lamar Jackson can, do what he does, if they can remain balanced, I think it's going to be very tough for the Titans. That said, it's hard for me to go against the Titans at the same time because I still think there is a little bit of uncertainty around Lamar. And, when I look at this injury report, man, the Ravens, they don't have it good, man. Marlon Humphrey, Calais Campbell, Yannick Ngakoue, Jimmy Smith, and Brandon Williams. These are guys that all are on the list. And, that's a lot of injuries to have. And you don't want those guys when you have to go out and defend Derrick Henry. Now, the Titans have a big list as well, but most of these are full participants, it looks like, or, people that were not injury related on there, like Derrick Henry's on there. So I'm probably going to pick the Titans in this game just because, I think Derrick Henry is so good. And I know the Ravens defense is good at stopping the run, but this guy's just a completely different breed. I think he's going to have a really good game. And like David said there, if Derrick Henry has a good game, Ryan has got these really good receivers to throw to.
Yeah, and for me, I look for Lamar Jackson. He's got to have a great game. As Josh mentioned there, he probably has a little bit extra motivation going into this game. But he's got to take care of the ball, and obviously he's going to run, and all the power to him. That obviously helps that offense, but he's got to make some big time throws. I feel like he's got to take advantage of a weaker Titans defense, especially in the secondary. I feel like they don't defend the pass really well. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but just some of my takeaways from watching them throughout the season. But as you said, a lot of big time defensemen on that injury report. A lot of guys that you definitely want to have, as you said, going up against Derrick Henry. And should most of those guys be out, the Baltimore Ravens defense, despite how good they have been on the season, might be in for a very, very long day trying to guard Derrick Henry. Noah's going with Titans. I'm going with Titans. I think it's going to be a really good game, guys. Definitely a very physical, pound the rock between the tackles, take what the defense gives you type game. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into our next game. I know this one's going to get David extra fired up. I'm sure there's going to be some comments coming in from him. We have Chicago traveling down there to Louisiana, taking on the New Orleans Saints, 4:40 kickoff, CBS and NFL. New Orleans favored by 10 in that one. And here's a number that doesn't shock me. Chicago 26 in total offense. Obviously a QB kind of carousel this season, starting with Trubisky, going to Nick Foles, and now being back with Trubisky, who I have some pretty big criticisms of him that I'm going to get into with this game that I saw, last week with a lot on the line there. 11th in total defense. As we all know, Chicago Bears usually always have a very solid defense. Again, this year they do, led by guys like Khalil Mack, obviously. And then on the other side, New Orleans, 12th in total offense. I think we all know, they're absolutely loaded on the offensive side of the ball. Drew Brees will be playing for them. And very surprisingly, at least, to some people, maybe 4th in total defense. This is a defense that probably has gotten better week in, week out, which is what you always want to see from your team, constant improvement, big or small. I don't know how they're looking in terms of COVID. I know that was a big question mark for them with guys like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Some other big names there, Noah, but, definitely a game here where we have two very good defenses, one, very well-rounded offense and another offense with some question marks. David Montgomery, obviously a phenomenal season from him, over 1,000 yards. I do think that, he's going to be huge for that Bears offense should they be able to run the ball, but definitely a very big question mark for me and Mitch Trubisky. Last week, he seemed to be having a pretty solid game, and then he throws a really not needed big-time interception late in the game to, really allow the Packers to get some momentum back and put a dagger in them. What are some of the things that you're looking for out of this game, Noah?
Well, yeah, like obviously, like you said, I completely agree. I think the main thing about this game is what's Mitch Trubisky going to do, because Mitch is a tough case. I've had my criticism about him, like you have. I don't think he's complete trash or anything like that, but I just think that he's just too inconsistent. And like Josh says there, do the Bears have a chance? It's tough. Their offense is not very good, in my opinion. And when I look at their stats, don't get me wrong, David Montgomery is a very good running back. I think Allen Robinson is an absolute stud. But other than that, when I'm looking at their skills positions, I don't really see anything that pops out at me. Darnell Mooney, Anthony Miller, the fossil Jimmy Graham, David Montgomery is one of the leading receivers, and he's the running back. I saw Cordell Patterson was injured as well. So, how's that going to impact? So, it's just very tough for me to see, in my opinion, the Bears having enough offense to keep up with the Saints. Because, like you said there, the Saints offense, 4th in total defense. I think their key player is Trey Hendrickson. T-Rex, as the Saints fans call him. On the other side of Cameron Jordan, they finally have, that solid 1-2 punch at defensive end. And, when I'm looking at the injury report here, only a couple guys here for the Saints. You got Nick Easton, Trey Hendrickson, Taysom Hill, Marcus Williams. Not really a lot that I'm looking at here. And, most of them are full participants, or they were just kind of limited to keep them safe. So that's good. And then when I look at the Bears, this man, I wish you could see it. This injury list is about 20 people long. It is insane. And, Josh says there that Hendrickson is out. This report must be outdated. So thank you guys very much. I did not know that. But yeah, this Bears injury list, I just can't, I'll just go over a few key names I see here. Our guy Roquan Smith, second-team All-Pro out of the University of Georgia. Cordell Patterson, like I mentioned. Jimmy Graham, not injury-related, so he'll be fine. Eddie Jackson with a wrist. Charles Leno, their left tackle with a toe. Khalil Mack with a shoulder, but he's a full participant, so he should be okay. Allen Robinson did not practice, but he'll probably play. Danny Trevathan, a full participant, not injury-related. So, yeah, I don't think Mitch can do enough in this game, man. I hate to say it, but the Saints are a very well-balanced team. Drew Brees, the wily veteran, who's unfortunately, we got the news that this is going to be his last season. So this could very well, his last playoff run, man. He's going to want to go out on top. And yeah, Josh, I agree. Roquan is a beast. Very good tackler, but that Bears defense is going to do all they can. But I think that the Bears just don't have enough to match the Saints offensively. When I look at their team, Alvin Kamara is just incredible. Michael Thomas, sure, he's had a down season because he's been injured so much, but he's still a superstar. Emmanuel Sanders has been a fantastic signing. And I think, Josh Hill, Adam Troutman, guys like this at tight end, they can make plays as well. So I got to pick the Saints in this game, unfortunately. I don't think that the Bears, they won't be able to hold that offense forever. And the Saints defense is very good against a struggling offense. I think Mitch is going to have a tough game. I'm going to pick the Saints something like, by 10 or 14 points here at home, especially.
Yeah, and, Roquan Smith there, leading tackler for that Bears defense. He did go down about midway through that game with the Packers last week. And for me, looking at the Bears here, as you said, I just don't think that they match up in terms of scoring and firepower. Obviously, it's pretty evident there in the numbers, and even more so when you go down through the list of names like you did. But yeah, really the only way I'd ever give them a chance in this game is if this game were being played up there in Soldier Field in the cold. That seems to help take the top off of high-powered offenses. But being down there in the dome, as you said, Drew Brees, that how great that offense has been. I can't see how the Bears can keep up. Yeah, their defense will probably start off good. Keep the Saints in check for a little bit, but I feel like the floodgates at one point or another are going to open up, and I feel like you have a very good prediction there, Noah, and like a 10 or 14 point spread, Saints winning. Just as we both said, just too much on the Saints side of the ball. They're coming back healthy after we went through that, and David and Josh cleared some things up for us. They're only missing really one big name, as far as I'm concerned, there with T-Rex. We could potentially see a very, very huge game from Alvin Kamara like we did a few weeks ago. But even if not, as we all said, they got plenty of weapons to spread the ball around. I expect a really, really big performance by Drew Brees. I feel like, he's going to want to go out on a really high note. I expect, 4 or 5 passing touchdowns realistically probably from him. If he doesn't get it, I was wrong. But, I expect a really good game from Drew Brees here.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know about 4 or 5 touchdowns good, but he's going to have a really good game. David says real prediction, Saints 31, Bears 17. I think that's about a fair prediction right there. But yeah, Brees is going to be very motivated. He obviously, if this is going to be his last season, he's going to want to go out on top. He's a fantastic player still, even at his age. I believe he's 41 right now, so he's going to come out motivated. Mitch Trubisky, he's unproven against a really good defense. And the Bears, it's not like this is a team that's 10-6 or something. This is a team that, barely snuck in the playoffs at 8-8. We talk about the Washington Redskins, the football team coming in at 7-9. It's not like the Bears, they didn't have a really good season either. And, the Packers really outclassed them in that game towards the end. I think that's just a difference in the quality of those teams. So, yeah, I don't see the Bears really having much of a chance. Of course, I could be wrong. Playoff football, the great thing about it is it's unpredictable. If that Bears defense can, keep it up for a good portion of the game, you know, the Bears do have really a few really good skills position players that can make an impact, like Montgomery and Robinson. But yeah, I'm gonna pick the Saints.
Yep, and I got to go Saints as well, Noah. Really, the only way I see the Bears having a chance in this game is Trubisky playing mistake-free football, having a pretty solid performance, and in Montgomery as well. As you talked about, there really isn't a whole lot of offensive weapons. Obviously, this isn't the Jimmy Graham of old that we saw, absolutely lighting it up his early days in New Orleans. So yeah, I gotta agree, Noah. We're both picking Saints there. With that said, let's go ahead and jump over to the final game on Sunday's slate, one that I'm very, very excited to watch on Sunday. Sunday night, we have Cleveland taking on Pittsburgh, 8:15 kick, NBC and NFL. Pittsburgh favored by 6 at home. And there was something really interesting that I've personally been waiting to talk about this week pertaining to this game, Noah, and Juju Smith-Schuster apparently didn't learn anything from his dancing escapades and goes out and says that, yeah, Browns are here. They're playing us in the playoffs, but it's the same old Browns. I don't even really recognize anybody on that team, a bunch of nobodies, basically. Obviously he didn't pay attention to Dabo Swinney and Clemson either, because Dabo trash talking got him absolutely blown out of that game. But personally, my take on this is it absolutely going to be the deciding for the factor of the game? No, absolutely not. Pittsburgh very well could win this game, but usually when you see stuff like this, it doesn't bode well for the whichever team has the guy saying this. If I'm Juju Smith-Schuster, man, you better have a big game, because if you say that stuff this week and you go out and have a terrible game, Noah, it's just not a good look for him.
Yeah, you like a guy that's confident like that. You can definitely respect that. But like you said, you got to go out there and, David saying Cleveland 27-24 there. I'm going to get into my prediction a little later. But yeah, I mean, as long as you talk the talk, you just got to make sure you can walk the walk. When I'm looking at the stats here, it says that Cleveland was something like 16th in total offense. Now that said, and I know we've mentioned this a few times before, I think their offenses looked a lot different. Coincidentally, since Odell actually got hurt, I think, we said this before, that Baker was probably forcing a little bit too much to Odell. Since he's been injured, Baker's just been really good. And for a guy that gets a lot of criticism, since week 7 of the season, he's thrown 16 touchdowns and 2 picks. 102 rating, completing 64% of his passes. Baker is coming into the playoffs very good. And, like you said there with Juju, you do not want to motivate the team. And, say what you want about Baker, but this is a guy, he has a chip on his shoulder. So if he's motivated coming in this game, he's coming into the playoffs hot, I can see him actually having a really good game here. Now, it's obviously not going to be an easy matchup because Pittsburgh's defense is really good, like we've mentioned a lot. Third in total defense right there. And so that's going to be a good matchup. But, what's Ben going to do? I think, Ben has had a very good season. My main issue with the Steelers' offense is their running backs haven't really been very good this season. I think James Conner has been injured a good bit. And then when guys like Benny Snell, and Jalen Samuels come in, they don't really have that same impact offensively. So this is a really good game. You can't really judge by last week because Ben wasn't playing. The Browns barely won that game, but playoffs are a completely different animal, man. And, a rookie head coach in Kevin Stefanski going against a guy we're both really high on, Mike Tomlin. This is going to be a very interesting matchup. A lot of people picking Cleveland. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one, Garth, because I'm still not really sure who I want to pick here.
Yeah, so my biggest takeaway looking, at this game, Noah, other than Juju Smith-Schuster's comments, obviously, is a couple of weeks ago when we did see, and we talked about this game a little bit earlier, when we did see Pittsburgh play the Colts, which, as we mentioned, very good defense, very balanced defense, stopping the run and the pass. We saw that Big Ben is still very capable, despite his age, of taking over games. That second half by him was absolutely phenomenal. He carved that defense up, just throwing the ball all around, throwing really beautiful deep passes. So, like you said, what do we see out of Big Ben? If he has a really good game, absolutely Pittsburgh, has a very, very good chance of winning this game. And one thing that I'm glad that you mentioned is Baker Mayfield. Obviously, a guy who plays with a chip on his shoulder. Definitely one of those guys that, you can just obviously tell he loves the game. He's very passionate, plays with a lot of emotion. They give him a lot more extra motivation and emotional firepower headed into this game. So I do expect a very good game from him. Despite both of these teams, being known more so for their defense, I actually could see a very, very offensive game here. With big performances by both quarterbacks, and maybe as much as they have in the past. I think that this game ultimately is going to come down to who wins the quarterback battle and Baker Mayfield versus Big Ben. Um, and who's gonna not turn the ball over. I feel like this is one of those games that when it's all said and done, you look back and go, man, that one time they gave up the ball, that one critical mistake is what cost them the game. I see a very close game going either way. Um, I'm going to have to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to pick Pittsburgh by 3 points in this one.
Oh man, it's just so tough. And when I look at this, I'm looking at the injury report right here. The Steelers have a few guys, but they're all full participants. But when I look at the Browns, Miles Garrett with the shoulder is questionable. Jack Conklin, Sheldon Richardson, so a few names. But I'd probably expect them all to play. I don't think it's anything too serious. If they're only questionable, I'll expect them to play. But like you said, what are we going to see? Because it's very interesting dynamic. I think these teams are very parallel. You have a quarterback playing his first playoff game. You got a rookie head coach compared to on the other side, a coach and a quarterback that have been here so many times. They've won 2 Super Bowls together. Just the epitome of consistency. That said, and you said Cleveland by 3, right? Or
Uh,
Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh by 3.
Pittsburgh by 3. Um, when I look at this, I think the Steelers coming in the playoffs have struggled a little bit lately. And then I think, like I said, since Odell went down, Baker's looked really good. That offense has come alive a bit. Nick Chubb is an absolute beast at running back. Definitely think they have the advantage running the ball. And Baker does a great job spreading the ball around to his targets. It is a really difficult game. And, like we mentioned with the Rams and Seahawks, this is another divisional matchup. These teams, it hasn't been as evident because the Browns have struggled for so long. These teams don't like each other. We saw it last year with that massive brawl with Miles Garrett and Mason Rudolph. There's some bad blood here. So this is going to be a great, I expect it to be a great physical game. Both these defenses, going at it, wanting to get after the quarterback. TJ Watt expected to be the defensive player of the year. He's gonna want to get after Baker. Miles Garrett is a beast as well. You picked Pittsburgh by 3. I think on that Sport Life poll earlier, I did pick the Steelers. But now the more that I think about it, I think that Cleveland is coming in really good and Pittsburgh has kind of struggled lately. I could very well be wrong, and a lot of my predictions are kind of out there. I'm actually going to pick the Browns to win this game. You said Steelers by 3. I'm going to go Browns by 3.
Okay, I respect the pick. No, like I said, definitely could see this game going either way. One thing that you pointed out, and I'm glad you did because I was actually going to mention it myself, is the fact that on one side you do have Mike Tomlin and Big Ben versus Baker, and as you said, a head coach who hasn't been there in the playoffs and won games and been to the Super Bowl. So that may prove to be a big advantage for the Steelers. A lot of games are won in the X's and O's and in-game adjustments to what the other team, is doing well. But yeah, definitely a hell of a game to end the weekend on and send us into the divisional round. With that said, just in case by some rare means you guys didn't know, obviously the Chiefs and the Packers are off this weekend. They will be taking on whoever is the lowest remaining seed next weekend, both having home field advantage. Road in the AFC going through Arrowhead, road in the NFC going through Lambeau. But yeah, no, this is, like I said, a game that I really look forward to watching. Obviously, divisional rivalry, as you said. I feel like those for not only the best regular season games, but also a lot of times the best playoff games as well. So, this is a game as a football fan, whether you hate or love either one of these teams, you're definitely going to want to tune in and watch. And like I said, for me, the biggest thing for this game and who I'm going to pick is who's going to have a better game out of Baker Mayfield and Big Ben. And, my gut says go with Big Ben. Despite the age, he's still able to take over a game. And I think that just the experience may prove to have him have a little bit better of a game in this matchup.
Yeah, and Garth, that's perfectly fair. I completely understand that. I'm just looking at it, and I think that thank you for Dave. I honestly forgot about that for a minute, but yeah, Stefanski isn't going to coach, but still there's going to be a young coach on the sidelines there, so it's going to be very interesting how that goes against Mike Tomlin, who's obviously very experienced. But yeah, perfectly fair to go with Ben. He's the reliable guy. He's been there so many times. I'm just looking at it, and I think that Baker's coming in really hot. You look at this, the Browns are big underdog story. Obviously not because they're a terrible team, because they're not anymore, but this is their first playoff game in a very long time. They want to reestablish themselves, and they're going against a team that they hate, that is so successful, with 6 Super Bowl rings. They're going to come out firing. I'm going to pick them in a close game, like I said, but I can't be mad whoever wins this game, because I have so much respect for the Steelers organization and the Browns. Just what a story. And you got to say, those fans up there in Cleveland, they've been through so much. The loyal supporters of this team, they deserve this playoff game, and I hope they get their playoff win, because they really deserve it. And I just wish they could have been there in the stadium this season to cheer on their team that has been good for the first time in a really long time.
Yeah, and talk about, a lot of pressure potentially on both of these teams, Noah. For the reason being, on the Steelers side of it, you start off very hot, undefeated, obviously, at 10-0. A lot of people criticizing them, talking about their schedule and who they haven't played, and then slipping up late and losing some games there and almost losing the division, actually. Big Ben very well could retire after the season. I don't think he will. I think he probably plays another season or two, but for them, the pressure is on, because everybody's saying, oh, Pittsburgh is going to get bounced in the first round, cakewalk schedule. They're not as good as everybody makes them out to be. And obviously Juju Smith-Schuster's comments as well add to that just a little bit. So the pressure is on them to get this done and prove everybody wrong that, all season has said, hey, the Steelers team really isn't as good as we're making them out to be, guys. And then, on Cleveland's side, you're finally there in the playoffs. You're taking on the divisional rival. We've talked about for the last couple of seasons now, there's all kinds of talent on this roster. With the amount of talent they have, they should be getting it done. And as you mentioned, it's been a very long time since Cleveland's even been in this position, let alone actually won. So obviously there's that pressure of that. So it very well could come down to, just what team handles it better mentally and emotionally. And, aspect, I'm rooting for Cleveland because, as you said, they finally deserve some winning there. Obviously, LeBron brought them a championship not too long ago, but, in terms of the Cleveland Browns, but, on the other side, like we've gone over now a little bit, Mike Tomlin and Big Ben. So, definitely a lot of keys to this game as far as I'm concerned. And, one of those games where you can't say for sure which one of these teams is going to win.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about these playoffs from what I'm looking at, Other than I'd say probably the Saints-Bears game, I think you have so many matchups here that are really even and could really go either way. And, we got 2 division rivalry games as well. Those are obviously going to be very, chippy, physical as well. And, playoffs are just a completely different animal for the regular season. Regular season football is fantastic. I think this has been one of the one of the best regular seasons we've ever seen. So when I look at this, I'm just saying, if the regular season was that good, just imagine what these playoffs are going to be like. And the fact that with the addition of the 7th seed, we don't just get 4 games now; we get 6. You just got to love this as a neutral fan with none of our teams in it. Just looking at it as a pure football fan, this is going to be a great weekend. Hoping for some really good games. I think they all will be pretty good. But yeah, let's see what the Browns do in this game. It's going to be a big pressure cooker for both these sides. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, most definitely. And we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here, guys. I want to go down through each one of these games really quickly and just go over what our picks were and correct me if I'm wrong, Noah, because I might screw up one of your picks here. But first game, Colts at Bills. I went Colts purely out of bias, as I said, just because I am rooting so hard for Phillip Rivers to get it done this season. Noah went Bills in that game. Second game of the weekend, Rams at Seahawks. I went Seattle by 3. I believe you picked the Rams, Noah, in that one.
Yes, I did.
Then we have the Tampa Bay at Washington game. I believe we both picked Tampa Bay there. We just felt like, the Washington defense is obviously good enough to have them in that game. The offense is just lacking. And then moving on to Sunday's slate, we have Baltimore at Tennessee kicking it off. This was one much like the game we just discussed where we both could see it going either way. I picked Tennessee. I'm actually forgetting which team you went with here, Noah.
I think I went with Tennessee.
Okay, so we both went with Tennessee there. The next game, I don't really have to guess. We both obviously went with the Saints, as we just mentioned there. And then this final game, we split, one of us going with Pittsburgh and one of us going with Cleveland. So, I don't know if I'll remember all those picks, but if you guys, want to go ahead and remember what our picks and tell us what we were right and what we were wrong about next weekend, when we move into the divisional round and talk even more so about playoffs, go ahead and do it, guys. But yeah, thanks for joining, Noah. As always, I had a really good time tonight. Really, really excited for football this weekend. Like, I don't know if I haven't been this excited for opening week of playoffs since the Chargers took on the Ravens, a few seasons back. Really hoping my guy Phillip Rivers can get it done. And thank everybody for joining tonight. Obviously, you guys make the show, obviously. Wouldn't want to be here without you guys. As much fun as I do have discussing sports with Noah, it's definitely much more exciting to have you guys here with us. And with that said, Noah, I'll kind of let you, get your piece in and wrap us up here.
Well, I just want to say, obviously, it's been great as usual. Discussing sports with you and the fans every week is just fantastic. And I hope the fans, keep track of our picks for us. Let's see what our records are. And the next week we can compare them, see who did better. Hopefully I do better, but we'll see how that goes. You never know with the playoffs, but this weekend, the playoffs are just going to be absolutely insane. Nonstop football the next 2 days. It's just going to be fantastic. And, just coming on here every week with you, talking sports and, interacting with the fans. It's just great. All our Sport Life guys in here as well, just always showing love. Really fantastic. Our guy David here, we got something very interesting in the works with him as well. So, we'll see how that goes. And then, our guy Darren as well, one of our most loyal fans, just want to say thank you to everyone for watching. Thanks to Sports Box for, obviously giving us this platform on Sweet Tea. Thank you to Crowd Play for sponsoring the show. And of course, biggest thank you of all to my man Garth right here, my co-host, best co-host you could ask for. And, I'm still waiting for that package that you sent me. It's going to be coming in very soon. Maybe I could wear that next week.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say that should UPS not screw up this week, guys, and take absolutely forever, we might just see Noah in a different jersey next week. I believe I've probably already talked about it and what it is, but I'm not going to say just for hopes of surprising everybody here. But yeah, we look forward to having you guys again next week. I got to go ahead and throw this up here out of sake of my jersey and being fired up. Let's go, Phillip Rivers, get that win tomorrow. Nothing against you Bills fans out there, but come on, man, Phillip Rivers, get it done. But yeah, thank you for coming on, Noah. I had a really good time. Definitely got a good idea in the works. I'm going to keep track of our playoff picks. And, each week we'll go over them. And then at the whole end of the thing, we'll compare total records as well there. But yeah, Noah, I look forward to seeing you next Friday night. Everybody, just if you can, if you're not working this weekend, sit down, enjoy some football. Shoot us some messages, comment on our posts over there in Sports Life and here in Sports Box. And, I just hope everybody has a great weekend watching some playoff football. Finally, we've made it, guys.
Absolutely, man. It's going to be great. I really look forward to it. Look forward to next week already and interacting with our fans. And, thanks to everybody involved. Another fantastic show. We're still only improving and, absolutely loved it. So, I hope everyone has a good night, has a good weekend watching some football, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you for watching the Sports Box. Follow us on Facebook at Sports Box Show, Twitter at Sports Box Show, Instagram at The Sports Box Show. Find us on YouTube and join Outside the Box, our Facebook sports discussion group. The Sports Box is brought to you by our friends at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use promo code THEBOX at sign up for 10 points. See you next time.